Death and rising, dying and rising, endings and beginnings. I like to reflect at this time of the year because of the time of the year it is and the way in which this theme is generally reflected on at this time more so than at any other time in the year. But it is an interesting time because it also impacts us in our own everyday world, because especially for those who have loved ones who are transitioning, no doubt there is the thought of the whole idea of rising, because we never want to see another person leave us. We would want them to stay with us forever. And age doesn't matter. The fact is that we are put in a place where we feel less than ourselves because we have lost a significant part of ourselves. But this theme of dying and rising is an extremely common theme in our world. But it is also one that we don't generally embrace. In other cultures, it is built into the whole developmental process of individuals, what they would call rites of passage. But in our Western society, our society is one in which we only see the ascending, the going up. We move from one stage of life to a better stage of life, to a better stage of life, to a better stage of life. And if it is up to us, we will ensure that nowhere in there's any dying. Nowhere in there is there any letting go. But in order for there to be a real birth, a real beginning, there must also be a real ending. But alas, we do not allow for endings. We fear endings. We can't believe that a particular ending has happened to us. We judge ourselves as failures because of an ending. We are a culture that, even though we're in the West and Christianity has a very powerful influence on how we engage the world, its most central influence is oftentimes ignored or pushed aside. The main tenet is death and resurrection. But as much as we proclaim this in the Christian communities, we hardly in our lives ever embrace the two together. We can only see the death, and we are seriously exhausted in our lives because of the potential deaths. We fight tooth and nail to not have to go through death. Yet it is the path through which we go higher. The many deaths that we are encouraged to go through are essential. They're essential to training us that we are a rising people. All of humanity is a resurrection people. Even if our particular faith tradition doesn't use that terminology, we're all about rising, new beginnings, the birth of a child. And oftentimes, there's even the synchronicity between the passing of an elder and the birth of a child, to help us to continue to hold that tension between the two and realize that they belong together. They really belong together. So as we reflect today, I'm encouraging and inviting you to just look beyond the dying and look at the rising. As I would have mentioned, our culture is not one that has real rites of passage. The little things that we may do to supposedly symbolize a person moving from one stage to another are not real rites of passage. There is not really that significant death, as it were. Even in terms of our young people, as they leave home to go off to university, the transition may be a little challenging, but it's just an expansion. There's no real experience of death, of letting go, of totally having to die in a sense and then be raised up. So our culture doesn't really have that significant rites of passage. But it doesn't mean that we ourselves should not explore it in our individual lives. Because we are oftentimes being led into places of death. And oftentimes we erroneously perceive it that we have failed or that there's something wrong with us. We look at others and we see how they're progressing in life, and we figure that there must be something wrong with me. And there's really absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are simply learning how to journey. If we can journey with the awareness that there's death and rising, if we can embrace the notion of looking beyond the death for the expectancy of the resurrection or the rising, then we would have a different vantage point from which we could go out into the world. So, how do we do this? The first thing for me is that I must come to the realization that things happen not to me, but they happen for me. Everything is a stepping stone. Now, when you apply the death and rising or the dying and rising to the notion of stepping stone, we can see that each step takes us higher. But as each step takes us higher, that's the resultant. But the process that we must go through is to go down and to come up. We haven't inherited in our Western tradition a lot of the vast mythologies that are out there. They're still present, but we've become so quote unquote civilized that we have abandoned those mythologies. And in some places where we have even used the mythologies have been corrupted. So when one would speak, for example, of the underworld and Hades, we would begin to think of hell and damnation and burning for eternity. But ancient traditions spoke of the underworld. And the underworld was the place where one had to go in order for one to pass through some aspect of the soul that would lead to a rising, a coming up higher. In our Western tradition, the mystical tradition, that has been held on to under the title of the dark night of the soul. But this is essential because we have to die in order to live. We have to die in order to live. There are stages in our journey where we can't go any further. And try as we may, nothing more is happening. It may be an occupation, a profession, maybe a relationship. It may be a faith tradition. But there comes a time in various aspects of our lives where try as we may, there's nothing more. We we begin to feel ourselves dying inside. But oftentimes our response to that dying inside is that we push harder. We fight harder. Or we simply become apathetic. We just hang there in the doldrums with no wind blowing. We're just showing up day by day in life. And we're refusing to die. We're refusing to die. Because we cannot see what is beyond this death. And because we cannot see what is beyond death, we hang on to what we know. This doesn't mean that we must go there and every time we have a challenge that we consider to death and look forward to the rising. But what it means is that we live from a place of rising. And to see where in our journey there needs to be the letting go and the allowing of something to die, either within us or around us, so that we can live, that we can move to the next stage of this journey. This is a beautiful journey. This is a journey that we have chosen. It is a challenging journey. There's no doubt about it. but it is your journey and my journey. And dying and rising are essential parts to this journey. So pause, reflect, and see what within you is dying. What within you are trying to resuscitate, or at least trying to give it intensive care, but it is comatose. It is just hanging in there because you continue to give it something to keep it from dying. Consider letting it go and allowing for the next stage of the journey. Because the journey goes on. There are parts within us that need healing. We need to let them go in order that they can be rebirthed. There are parts within us that are carrying memories of hurt, pain. We have shut them away in so many different ways. And that shutting of them away is almost like putting them in ICU and just leaving them there. But we need to let those parts go through the process of death and rebirth, because they have been carrying something for us, something no doubt from childhood. But we need to be able to let it die so that it can be rebirthed in our new world. For we've left the old world of childhood and we are in a new world of adulthood. But those parts are still hanging on to the previous context. And dying and rising are integral parts of our human experience. Ask yourself, how does it show up in my life? When I look back, where are the parts in my journey that there's been dying? Where are the times that I've been able to allow the dying and I've been able to embrace the new beginning? Where are the moments that I've refused to allow the dying and I continue to hold on to it? Just reflect on it for a few moments. It's important. It's part of the journey. And there's no judgment. There's free will. It isn't everything that we're going to be able to allow to pass through the dying and the rising. That's a reality. But we must embrace the concept of dying and rising because it is a natural part of our human existence. And when we don't see it as a natural part of our human existence, then we deny ourselves some significant opportunities of growth and becoming. As I said, we are not perfect, and we wouldn't get it right every time. But if we have it as part of our understanding of this journey, then there will be significant times when we're able to go through and allow the dying and await the rising. There's a statement used within the context of the Christian faith tradition that says, life is changed, not ended. Remember that.